With European elections just 100 days away, Euronews took the streets of Brussels to see if people knew when to mark their calendars to elect their MEPs.
German soldiers are preparing to relocate to Lithuania in 2027 as NATO allies reject calls to send troops into Ukraine.
Ukraine's armed forces chief, Oleksandr Syrsky, has claimed that the Ukrainian army shot down 3 Russian bombers early on Thursday. The announcement comes as Russia continues its attacks, particularly in the Donetsk region. Police there say Russian missiles hit several buildings in Pokrovsk but left no casualties. Donetsk Technical University and a school were hit. 14 residential and 2 administrative buildings, a cultural centre, post office and a heating plant were damaged. Russia has also released images it says shows Russian artillery units operating in Ukraine without specifying a location. But a spokesman for the Ukrainian armed forces in the east claims that Russia is trying to capture 2 towns in the eastern Bakhmut region. Weighing in on the backlash against the French president's invitation to open the door to European countries sending troops to Ukraine, the Bulgarian prime minister has underscored that as long as he's in office, the decision to send Bulgarian soldiers will never be discussed or taken. In the midst of Russia's invasion and EU farmers' dispute over Ukrainian grain, Kyiv sent over 7,500 tons of wheat flour to the World Food Programme in Sudan for emergency food distribution. The initiative is part of the Grain from Ukraine project launched by President Zelensky and made possible by the German Foreign Office.
Ukrainian forces have pushed back Russian troops from the village of Orlivka west of Avdiivka, but the situation on the eastern front remains difficult, Ukrainian Army Chief Oleksandr Syrsky said on Thursday. Orlivka is less than 2 kilometers northwest from Lastochkin, which was recently occupied by Russian forces. This territory west of Avdiivka remains the focal effort of Russia's offensive in eastern Ukraine, says the UK Defense Ministry in its latest update, adding that since the seizure of Avdiivka, Russian forces have advanced approximately 6 kilometers from the center of the town. The tactical gains serve primarily to consolidate Russian positions around Avdiivka. Russia is also likely seeking to build momentum of the axis to take advantage of the fact that there are fewer fixed, well-defended positions and urban areas from which Ukrainian forces can defend. Ukrainian officials continue to report that Ukrainian forces have stabilized a defensive line immediately west of Avdiivka, specifically along the Tonnenke-Orlivka-Berdichi line, where terrain and several reservoirs are favorable for defensive operations. Ukrainian military observers characterized Ukrainian fortifications west of Avdiivka as, quote, disappointing and problematic. Ukrainian Army Chief Oleksandr Syrsky said he took measures to correct, quote, certain miscalculations commanders had made that directly affected the stability of the defense in certain areas.
Around 5,000 German soldiers are preparing to relocate to Lithuania in 2027 as NATO allies continue to reject calls to send ground troops into Ukraine, being the first permanent deployment of German troops since World War II. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius visited affected troops.
Wir haben ja Erfahrung mit Auslandseinsätzen, auch über die Battle Group. Und trotzdem sind die Bedingungen hier nochmal andere, weil wir eben über mehrere Jahre sprechen und in vielen Fällen eben auch über einen Einsatz unter Begleitung der Familie.
2 combat battalions will be deployed to support Lithuania, following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine 2 years ago. The reinforcement of Lithuania is high on the agenda as concerns grow about a potential attack from Moscow. Lithuania borders with the Kaliningrad Oblast, along its ally Belarus. One soldier said he had already volunteered to relocate.
Es gibt Kameraden, die wollen gehen, es gibt Kameraden, die nicht gehen wollen. Für mich persönlich hat sich die Frage gar nicht gestellt. Letztendlich diene ich meinem Land und somit diene ich auch Europa und Europa ist auch Litauen. Ne? Und das ist für mich natürlich wichtig gewesen und so habe ich das natürlich auch zu Hause kommuniziert.
The permanent deployment of German troops will only be 100 kilometers from the Russian border, NATO hopes the stationing will protect Lithuania as they predict Russia could attack the 60-kilometer stretch of land on the Polish-Lithuanian border if the conflict escalates. Some experts have expressed concerns regarding the cost of the relocation and maintenance, which is estimated to cost around 30 million euros per month.
German Defence Minister Boris Pistorius said around half of the troops stationed in Bavaria have expressed interest to relocate to Lithuania. The UK, Canada and the USA also deploy troops in Eastern European states. Liv Stroud in Bavaria for Euronews.
With the European elections just 100 days away, Euronews took the streets of Brussels to see if people knew when to mark their calendars to elect their MEPs who will be representing them for the next 5 years.
Do you know when the European elections are?
I don't know.
Non, pas du tout.
This year. Okay, but I don't know the month.
C'est en octobre, non? Ou novembre, un truc comme ça?
In June.
June?
Yes, in June.
This year, month of June.
Mais en tout cas, j'ai l'intention d'aller voter, oui, ça c'est sûr.
These elections are taking place in a tense time as the EU faces several crises, such as the war in Ukraine and the inflation. Citizens have different priorities for their next European Parliament.
Well, I guess ecology, that's very important.
El cambio climático, que se reunieron pero no arreglaron nada.
Maybe talk about Palestine and what's going on over there.
They need to discuss Palestine.
Qu'on vive de nouveau en paix.
Less liberal, more social.
Les pays ont envie de se refermer sur eux-mêmes. Cette montée du nationalisme me fait peur.
I do hope that the extremes won't be there.
Do you plan on voting this year?
I probably will, yes.
Ah, je m'intéresse pas du tout à ça. Je suis désolée.
Local buses, trams and subway trains have come to a halt in much of Germany as transport employees carry out another 2-day strike. They're calling for better working conditions, including shorter working weeks and extra compensation for shift and night work. Such short warning strikes are a common tactic in German contract negotiations. They've frustrated travellers and commuters.
Man muss natürlich beide Seiten sehen und man kann verstehen, dass die Menschen, die bei der KVB arbeiten, eben auch entsprechend bezahlt werden wollen und dafür eben auch entsprechend handeln.
Aber dass man dauernd immer wieder streitet, das finde ich dann unfair. Also gegenüber die Menschen, die auch den Nahverkehr auch fahren. Ne?
The union Verdi called for the 48-hour warning strike in the ongoing nationwide wage dispute in regional negotiations. The walkout coincides with weeks of rail, airport and local transport strikes across the country.
More than half of Denmark's drinking water supplies are contaminated with pesticides and other toxins. The findings are from a report commissioned by several Danish regional councils. 1 in 10 water sources exceeds acceptable levels of contamination, it concludes. The report says the situation has reached a critical point and threatens the transition to a green economy. Several waterworks are in the process of purifying their drinking water. At the same time, Copenhagen uses up to 2.5 times more water than what geologists consider sustainable.
Estamos en pleno centro de Madrid, en un edificio.
Euronews is with Alejandro Villanueva from real estate agency Gilmar on a commercial visit.
Esta oficina, de 172 metros cuadrados, es una de tantas oficinas que se están quedando vacías.
Offices once full now sit empty, all down to the work from home surge which started during the pandemic. In the centre of Madrid alone, more than 180 office buildings could soon have a new life.
La oficina tiene luminosidad, tiene ventilación. El proyecto que habría que hacer sería mínimo para adaptarlo a vivienda y el espacio es más que suficiente incluso para sacar varias unidades.
La expansión del teletrabajo está dejando infrautilizadas cientos de oficinas como esta en la capital de España. Madrid pretende ahora transformarlas en hasta 20.000 pisos en una ciudad donde se necesita desesperadamente aumentar el parque de vivienda.
Spaniards, on average, go to the office less than 3 days a week. Meanwhile, workplaces are changing.
Las empresas están buscando espacios más colaborativos para adaptar y atraer de nuevo a los empleados a la oficina, y pues los edificios más obsoletos que no se están adaptando a estas nuevas tendencias pues serán objeto de una transformación. Pues podría ser la solución a esa falta de stock del parque residencial, siempre y cuando la normativa urbanística y arquitectónica lo permita.
The regional government of Madrid hopes to make it easier to change the transition from office space to residential over the next 2 years. Despite the demand for housing in the city centre being much higher, most vacant offices are in the city outskirts. Their transformation can only be successful if they are equipped to live in.
25 films, including Oscar and Caesar Award nominations, will be screened at the 14th edition of the Francophone Film Days in Budapest. People will be able to meet the directors and actors of several of the films in the Hungarian capital.
The French language is something that so many people across the world have in common. It's a language that is spoken on the five continents, which is the case only of English, and which is spoken in areas with the greatest demographic growth. So it's really a language with proud history, language for today and language for tomorrow. And so we will have now the cinematographic celebration of Francophonie.
The Francophone Film Days will run until March 10 in Budapest, but a selection of the program will be screened in 16 cities in the countryside over the coming weeks.